Good morning and welcome to Mystical Teachings from the Tanya. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We welcome Deborah from Brazil, Dennis from Tennessee, Sandy, good morning, Chris from Mexico, Carolina from Montreal, good morning, Karen from Ohio, Shalom. Shelley is with us from South Africa. Thank you for joining. Lisa. Yes, the smiley magnets. My grandchildren. May they be well. Rick, good morning to you in the Chicago area. Crystal Lake, Illinois, precisely. John from North Carolina, good morning. One Humanity application. Thank you for joining. Marla, good morning. And Suvi from Finland, good afternoon. Benjamin from Columbus, Ohio. Good morning. And Diane from London, Ontario. Erica, shalom. Serach, good morning. Sophie, good morning to you. Paula from Bakersfield, California. Sarah Malka from North Carolina, good morning. Margot, good afternoon to you in Belgium. Rona, a joyous day to you. Annette from Nebraska. Omaha, precisely. Daniela, shalom. Arya from Miami, Boker Tov. Sigalit from New York, good morning. Who else is with us here? Laura from Tennessee. Lisa, awesome. Hannah from California. Sandy's asking for the shofar to be blown. Probably a great idea. I don't know if maybe on Sunday, because I'd have to find, okay. Denise, Boker Tov to you in New York. Linda, her sister, good morning in New York. Julie in Florida. Yan in Mexico. Dawn, good morning. Lioness from Ethiopia. Okay, wonderful. Okay, folks, today we begin and conclude the 16th letter. This letter is about giving. Giving even when you don't have what to give. The Alter Rebbe, as we know, collected funds for those who were extremely destitute in the land of Israel. The land of Israel at that time was under the Ottoman Empire. Rocky terrain, vegetation, growth was almost impossible. People were extremely destitute. That was the situation. So that the Alter Rebbe writes, "My beloved, my brethren and friends who are to me as my own soul." He says that the hardships of the times, and this is to fellow Chassidim living in Russia, Ukraine. He says the hardships of the times are not hidden from me. He knows that the earning of a living has declined, that there are no providers even. Husband and wife having a challenge, difficulty with having parnasa, livelihood. So much so, even borrowing money. Literally borrowing money to eat. That was the situation in Russia. The Alter Rebbe says, I'm aware of. He says, nonetheless, we need to have compassion, and we should fully to our very soul. He says, what is not acting rightfully, is that we should close our hands and not give. And not just give, but that we don't give with a generous eye to those who are completely destitute. Because he says, if we won't lift up our eyes to them, who will? Who's going to be there for them? So they don't even have livelihood. And yet, they're challenged. Who will have pity on them, the Alter Rebbe says. Now he goes into, teachings from the, from the sages. There's a teaching in the Talmud says, based on a verse in Vayikra and Leviticus, it says, Chaya achicha imach, that your brother may live with you. With you, but subordinate to you. In other words, your life comes first. So the Talmud speaks of a case that if you are in the desert and you are there with another and you have a bottle of water, and this is a very theoretical issue, but with that bottle of water, it's enough for you to live. If you give it to your brother, you won't live. If you give it to the other, you won't live. If you share it, you won't live. Again, it's a question in Jewish law. You won't live. There's enough for you. That's it. So, Chay achicha imach means that if it's just enough water for you to live, so your life comes first. Your own life takes precedence, right? So the Alter Rebbe says, well, you might want to use that teachings over here, that your life takes precedence over someone else's life. So where I am, the Chassidim in Russia, who are having an extremely difficult time, so their life takes precedence because they're even borrowing money to eat. So Alter Rebbe says that concept of your life takes precedence is only when it's on an equal footing. In other words, two people need the same water, or both need food just to put on the table. But if it's not merely about literally bread on the table, but it might be chicken and meat on the table versus someone else having bread on the table, then you can't say your life takes precedence. Because your life takes precedence when it's about life. But if it's about some extras, clothes for Shabbos, nicer clothes for Shabbos, nicer food for Shabbos, while there's others that don't have bread for Shabbos, let alone nicer food. So then you can't say your life takes precedence. There's this idea of what's essential for life is brought down also in the Talmud, an interesting conversation. If there's a river that goes through two communities, but it goes through community A and then community B. Community A uses up most of the water that is running through that community. And there isn't enough for community B. So if both are for drinking water, for human consumption, then community A has the right to use it all, even though there might be little or none left over for community B. If though community A is they have wells in their community that they can get drinking water from, and the river they use for washing their clothes, and community B, right, who gets the water only thereafter, right, needs it for drinking water, then the law is community A can't use it for washing their clothes. Community B gets it because it's for drinking water, right? So we see here clearly the idea that there's only when there's an equality, right? Both need it for drinking water. Well, it's the community A gets it first because the water is going through them first, coming to them before it's going elsewhere. So what do we see over here? That the Chassidim in Israel were completely destitute. As opposed to the Chassidim in Russia, they were poor. They were poor, but not completely destitute. They were able to borrow money. They were able to, somehow get things together. Minimally, but they would have even clothes for Shabbos, nicer food for Shabbos, not just bread. Whereas the Chassidim in Israel at the time literally did not have that. Did not even have the bread. So therefore he says, you got to be still generous. Now, that, the Alter Rebbe says, is only by the exact requirement of the law, right? But even if, let's say, it didn't apply exact, it wasn't just about luxuries, it still would not be proper to go by the letter of the law. In other words, you also need it for basics, because if you only go by the letter of the law, so the Alter Rebbe says, well, maybe then that's how God's going to look at you, by the letter of the law, and that's not good. You want God to go beyond the letter of the law with you and how he views you. So act that way and go beyond the letter of the law with others. That's even when the letter of the law is that there's an equality, right? Furthermore, the Alter Rebbe says we all need divine mercies. If we're not going to be compassionate, how's God going to be compassionate upon us? We need to arouse that compassion that even when we don't have, or we barely have, we're still compassionate and we still give. Furthermore, he says, if we're not righteous, so we always need to give tzedakah, charity, to atone for our misdeeds. So even by the letter of the law, you still don't need to give, but you should still give because of our misdeeds that we need tzedakah to bring atonement for. Furthermore, he says, an argument that we're truly believers of descendants of believers. That's what defines Jewish people. Ma'aminim b'nei ma'aminim, believers, descendants of believers. What do we believe? We believe that when we do good, God will repay us for our good deeds. We will get back much more than we put in. And finally, he says that if others in the community are doing this, don't separate yourself from the community. If others are giving, then one should not be absent from joining the forces of the community and give. Here we're talking about giving even when you don't got. That's how powerful this is in the teachings. God should never put us to the test. But today the truth is, it's not like 200 years ago where people really, had minimal. Today, those who have minimal have a lot. They even have a smartphone. And many other things, for the most part. So, in our situation, definitely, we always need to be giving. Here we're speaking about tzedakah, charity, to give money to those who don't have. But of course, it's giving in any way, in all ways, above and beyond just money. Sometimes you don't have the energy, still give. Sometimes you're just emotionally not there, still give. Sometimes you're financially not there, still give. That's what we're all about. High level of giving, mind you. But the bottom line is, God will definitely take care of us. That's our belief. And that definitely we need the healing through the giving. And we need to really have compassion. A lot of major ideas here. Any questions, any comments? So, of course, today, what does it mean, essential needs? So essential needs are probably different than what it was 200 years ago. You know, and yes, so essential needs. No, the Alter Rebbe is making the argument over here that even if your essential needs are not complete, still give. That's the whole point. Not when you have your essential needs, then you'll give. Then you'll give. No. Even when we don't have, we'll still give. Yep, that's Shanabina, exactly, give, and God, that's one of the points we made over here. Exactly, give, and God will give. Yep, Marty, very true. All right, folks. What do we mean? What does it mean? Whatever we got to share. As Chassidim of old used to say, in my piece of bread is your portion. That's an amazing way to live, to think. That, in other words, I have a portion that God gave me, but my portion is, your portion's there too. It's not just, not just that when I finish having, if there's something left over, I'll give. I'll make sure there's something left over. No. In my portion is your portion. A different kind of outlook. Unique. That's why we need the Alter Rebbe to teach us. So folks, share what you got. Share your money. Share your wealth. Share your poorness. Even if you don't have, we still have to be giving. So we got to give of our money. We got to give our resources, our time, our energy, everything. All right, folks. So share. Sharing is caring. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you. Tanya, have a wonderful day and a good Shabbos.